I first met Jerry at the FAR conference. Jason Black brought him over to introduce us at our booth. And I knew Jerry, I just didn't know Jerry, if that makes sense. Because if you've seen the rebranding video where they talk about the transition and breaking out of the safe space, and they bring this guy into a room where they have all the cool rebranding up on the wall, and he's moved to tears, and he says how awesome it is, and they nailed it. Well, that is Jerry. So he's actually featured in every one of our recruiting presentations because we show that video, and we've shared it at some of our meetings. So I'm excited to have him here. And one of the reasons I wanted to, bring him on is you look at what Jerry does from a marketing perspective. Personally, I love it. Too often, agents, all of their social channel is filled with, look at the house I just sold, look at the house I just sold, look at the house I just listed. It's me, 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 me. He is branding himself. He's branding the area. And he would correct me if I'm wrong here, the North Fork with his amazing prop. And it's got that distinctive look and feel, and it makes you want to know more about him. It makes you it creates a feeling of, I want to work with him. I want to get to know this guy and have him help us. So Jerry, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you're at today.
Well, it kind of goes through that progression. You and I actually kind of were on each other's radar just through social on Facebook like a decade ago. And then as you looked at all the changes, when we got into that down market, what was all the speaker conferences for real estate talking about? Now people really need to know your value, your education, your resources. So you need to get out there and say what you can do to help them through that process. And then I started looking at it, and it's like it became groupthink. If I started running something that I get a Centurion Award, other brokers in my market are like, we're now #1 because of that. And I started looking at what the advertising to the local community and consumer was, and said, that's not really that interesting to them. It's only interesting to other real estate agents and brokers. So then I tweaked my advertising and said, well, what if we talked about our service and what our experiences are like from people that are writing reviews? And that kind of opened up the door and said, instead of saying what I do, why don't I show who I am? So has anybody on this session actually met me in person?
John was at the conference.
Yep. And if any of you were to describe me, what are some of the adjectives you would use to describe me?
John?
Very upbeat.
Rose, what is your impressions?
Unmute yourself, Rose.
I'm sorry, my dog is barking up a storm, so I can't really hear. What was the question?
So if you had to do a couple adjectives of describing me, what would you use?
Describing you?
Yeah.
Oh, let me see, a couple of adjectives. Loving, easy to talk to.
Mr.
I'm not
Robbins.
very good at it. I'm not very good at this, am I?
No, that's fine. Mr. Robinson, what is a couple of your adjectives?
Outgoing, energetic, focused.
And why I'm bringing this up is you never met me, so how do you know this? How could you answer that question when we just started talking in the last couple of minutes? And part of it is you probably come across some of my social media, either on Workplace or on Facebook or on LinkedIn or wherever those elements are. And that's part of what all this is about, is we're in sales, but we don't need to act like cheesy salespeople, like a used car salesman. We want to be engaging and interesting. So some of the things I started looking at is we're at one of the conferences and we're over at Disney World. And when the monorail would come in, why was it I was getting more excited when the orange monorail showed up versus some of the other colors? Because I associated that. Orange is one of my favorite colors. So when people are out searching for a listing agent or an agent working with them as a buyer, what are some of those elements that they're doing? If I can switch this over kind of quickly. You guys can see the screen?
Yeah.
So here's the North Fork. So that story is in 1978, my first job was on a potato farm moving irrigation pipes here. And then I started looking at, we're on the trendy North Fork of Long Island, which is an hour and a half east of New York City. And it's a lot of vacation homes, second homes, future retirement, as well as locals. So then I figured, why don't I take one of my potato forks, add a north to it, and now I've got a North Fork. And now I have something engaging to talk about. And then tying in that advertising, now I'm in a sunflower patch. So why am I walking through a sunflower patch? It's a great header for all of my ads, but those sunflowers are being grown from Mr. Cider, who I used to know as a kid, who's pressing the oil out of these sunflower seeds to take his potatoes that he's still trying to produce, because the struggle is real, to make North Fork potato chips. So now in the advertising that I'm doing, there's a backstory behind that that makes sense. So when you go through that, I was asking what those adjectives are. What you need to look at is, well, how do I become you? Well, you shouldn't. I'm me. And I'm not worried about what some other agent's going to do in their market, because that's them. Because I got to the point of looking at, if you describe me, what are those adjectives that you would use to describe me? He's stylish, he's personable, he's engaging. So what are those elements? I got great shoes, because we're in sales. You got to show up looking proper. I'm in New York. These people give me about 60 seconds and they're either in or out. So what if I started doing some shoe shots? I love staying high energy. So I'm at all the local coffee shops. So we did Mr. Coffee for a couple of years ago, starting to tie that in. Then I started looking at, how can you relate that people are going, who is that guy? So one of the things about the branding, and if people have been watching some of this on Workplace, they were losing their minds in part of it. We were so used to screaming everything we had to say and do. It had to be in the biggest font. It had to be in the bold versions of it. And then there was so much visual story there, you weren't hearing anything. So when you do something like this, when my photographer was working with me, I'm like, I want the fork over my shoulder. He's like, I can't see your face. And I'm like, I know, I want to do that. Yeah, but I can't see your face. That was intentional. I want people to imagine themselves in these pieces. And then more importantly, it creates curiosity. So you're like, well, who is this dude? So then they go in and they start searching. And when they start searching or looking closer, now you have their attention. If it's too big, they're just scanning and they're flipping right by, and you've lost them. And that's part of what we're trying to change in this storytelling. And if you're doing what you are and what you love, that's where that comes back out again. I was searching through last night on the different profiles on these websites, and some of you got connections from me. That's what the consumers do also. So who is he, and do I find something with him or her that I could relate to? One of the descriptions talked about watercolors. Why am I not seeing anything about watercolors? You're talking about it in your description. I want to see something about that. It doesn't have to necessarily be the watercolor artwork. It could be graphics of watercolor paint pots that are set up. And that becomes a continuing storyline. So when we look at Workplace as another option here, we're saying North Fork plus beaches equals summer. Then we also get onto a little bit of videos with it. In this video, when I shot of why you should go to 121, which I think you should go to 121, a lot of the things I've learned over time is just watching other people going, I want to be like that. And then you get on the plane ride back home and it starts processing in your head, what could you do with those elements and ideas to incorporate them in your own local markets? So what I wanted to bring up on that is this ad that we ran is I did a lot with the fork over the shoulder for 2018. Now we're rolling into 2019. You need to say something different, because if you keep saying the same thing, people are going to tune it out. So one of the elements I've learned is the only constant in our world now is change. So once you figured out one piece to your marketing or your services, now figure out how you're going to evolve that as you're driving around between appointments. So here's one of my listings that's actually got the fork incorporated in there. And now we're going to tie the next one into one of the local coffee shops I go to all the time. So now you're taking where I go, what I do, and what I'm shooting, and we're telling it in a more engaging format. This is not me standing in front of the house with a fork next to my body with a silhouette of it. I've now taken the interior of that shot and told a better visual graphic. And then what's more interesting is if this house sells and moves on to the next people, the marketing and branding isn't invading their privacy of the property that they purchased. It's just telling an overall story. When I go a little further down for the way we talk about awards, is here's something that's in one of our new offices that rebranded, and we're just talking about in here just a few words that come to mind when I'm asked, how's real estate? Grateful and rewarding. So don't talk in a bragging format. That's what we tend to go to. We're trying to compete with the other agents and the other firms, and we start getting into this braggy competitive conversation. Just share what you would talk about at a dinner party or with your friends or family. If it's more conversational, they're more interested in hearing it. We do that privately, but then when we go to do something in marketing, it becomes this big braggy side of it. So when I go a little further down, now we're talking about video. So one of the elements that came up earlier is we need to get more comfortable being on camera. Why can't you take a shot like this, which is actually one of my listings. And that's just taking from the local community. I'm walking up the front door. I'm shooting my feed as I'm walking through some of the rooms, shooting my feed as I'm going down to the basement and swiping through. Those are quick, easy clips. Then you can go into one of the video ad or apps and edit it together. It's not showing me on there. So there's different ways to tell that story. As I get back out of that. I also wanted to tie into what our extraordinary experiences are. So when you look at part of our properties, especially get onto Facebook and all that, we can tie that new branding in. So here I'm doing the new welcome mat, and on there, I'm saying in the beginning, shut the front door. This agent suggested, oops. This agent suggested to the human behind the door they could add a new coat of paint as we prepare to present this home to the market. Both humans agreed. Brought some swagger to the table, trusted advisor, listing agent advice, relentless moves. So there's ways we can talk about our listing that are more ethereal, that they're saying, that sounds kind of interesting. What's that house about? And this is part of our lead-in before we've listed. So it's not a coming soon. It's just kind of the backstory of what we're doing day to day. Then as I get the listing up, I want to show you how we can use Matterport in some of our feeds. So here's crafted to engage. So this is a new construction. I stage each of my properties. So I'm telling a visual story here. So it looks like it's in a little beach community. It's got a nice open layout. As we move to the front, what I started adding into those extraordinary experiences is there's a back shot of a person. That kind of ties into the ads and the other graphics that you've been seeing on the other websites, but it's not about me. When you click on the link here, it's hot linking into a video. When we click on the video, so when I'm going over here is I've got the microphone in front because anybody that's seen me in some of my other sessions, I try to use some props as you see with the North Fork. Then as I talk about what's around the local area, now I do a quick time lapse. So as this catches up on the feed, it's time lapsing through the video. So while I'm showing that particular house, they're also seeing what the region's about and what the activities are doing. So you're becoming not only a real estate agent, you're sharing what the community is offering. So we can see we're in a waterfront park. Pulls back into the shops and dining. And then you can take boat tours and some of those other activities that are out there. So why I bring up YouTube on here is this is on my YouTube channel. YouTube also has some videos that you guys are running. So I Googled one of the agents. On the agent, the first results that came up at the top was their Realtor.com profile. Clicked onto that saying, wow, that's their first versus some of the others. And there was no pictures, no bio, no information. A little further down on my search page, came into a ONEBLIE video talking about what it's like working with that company. So one of the pieces to this is you got the higher level branding with Century 21. They're setting the larger stage of what the whole company is about. Then you go down to the next layer of what your brokerage is doing. So ONEBLIE is putting out great blog posts. They're doing great graphics. They're doing great little video clips. You can share those out. Then as you're seeing what I'm doing with my personal branding, that's my real estate voice. And then you go into who I am as a person. So there's really 4 layers that you're incorporating in each of these and then running them out so that they make sense. So why I'm bringing up why is there so many different channels and why do they make sense? This is Jerry Cibulski, personal page on Facebook. The 4, you guys are still seeing that? So on the top here, we've got the side profile of my fork. So that's on my graphics and my personal profile. When we go to things I'm doing in the community, my regional page is Jerry Knows North Fork Facebook business page.
Technology.
Yeah, it's catching up. So each of these actually come in with me on the side profile with the megaphone. So the megaphone is talking about what's happening on the North Fork. So that shot changes and we tell our stories in our background. This video is doing a quick little clip on a beach cleanup that was happening out in the area. Then we created the graphic. So that graphic up in the upper left is actually a silhouette of my photo that was pulled back out to create an icon within that brand story. And then as we go a little further down, we can also, here's the fall theme of it. Here is the spring theme of it. So as we go through the seasons, I know I need to do that side profile view for each of these shots on this portal. Then if I go back to the main page and we talk about real estate, we have Jerry Cibulski team at Century 21 Albertson Realty. Should catch up here shortly. So now here's the graphic of the Jeep. So this all started with me doing that fork in a sandy road with the Century 21 sign on the side on my vehicle. So as I'm driving around, you're experiencing part of that there, and it's not a big Century 21 placard on the side. When we get into the graphics, now we start taking the listings. So there's the Century 21 videos that are out there. There's Valentine's Day. So with Valentine's weekend coming through, I took the interior of that home, took the kitchen, the dining table, and the wood-burning fireplace, and did Valentine's decorations on those shots, loaded them for the open houses for that week, and then when it got done, took those shots with the Valentine's themed stuff by the fireplace out and put the regular shot of the fireplace back in again. So this is how you can tell interesting stories on your properties. And if I can get this to load a little further down, we're also doing 360 tours. So when I shot that Matterport, I also have a 360 photo that I can upload. So out of that one listing, I've done a holiday theme already. I've done a pre-listing with painting the front door. I've done a Matterport tour that walks through it, and I've done a 360 photo featuring one of the areas. Now I can leave there and go down to the beach in this beach neighborhood and tell another story about the beach and what the activities are happening there. So there's multiple ways to pull together. There we go. So there's multiple ways we can pull together, different ways to tell our storylines. Check my notes real quick. pull together our storylines to figure them out. So a lot of the agents are always saying, how do you know how to do this? It's just so easy for you and it keeps evolving. The way it comes is once you get started with one thing. So I was doing coffee shops or shots. I was actually down in Florida. I don't know if anybody heard earlier. My parents live in Bradenton. So when I turned 50, 3 years ago, we went to Anna Maria Island and rented something for a week on Anna Maria Island. My idea was taking a vacation, which I don't do. I want to walk out with a cup of coffee in the morning. There was no place there to walk and get a cup of coffee. I come back to my local market. I'm like, wow, look at all these places I can get a coffee. So I'd go to Facebook, take a shot of me holding that coffee mug in front of that building. Whatever that shot was, it got posted, tagged it to that location, went on with it, and the next day did the same thing. As I went to the hospital and got one with a Band-Aid on the side of the cup for one of my friends that was going through surgery. The next day was at 7-Eleven. So I got a vintage plaid coat that I had as a winter coat that was red and black plaid that worked perfect in front of their logo signs with it. So then you started connecting what you were wearing with the themes of the shops. And they were just quick one takes, post, go, post, go. And as I got that down, I'm saying, wow, that was kind of easy. Now I need to do something different. So then we got on to stories on Facebook and Instagram. So it was like, well, how am I putting something out that's not polished content that could be interesting? So I'm looking down at my phone saying I need to do something today. I see my shoes are there, so I take a shoe shot. Then that led to every morning getting out of the vehicle to go to the coffee shop to pick up that piece of coffee. I took a shot of my shoes on a arrow in the road. I took it in the mulch in the side of the road. And if you go onto my Facebook, you'll see my shoe shot folder on photos that all of a sudden I was like, here's 15, 20 different photos that all came out of a 3 telephone pole area. And I just knew ahead of time that's what I was doing the next morning. I would figure out what I was wearing for the day to tie that together. And it took about 60 seconds. So part of these ideas sound like it's so complicated, but it's with anything else. First, you got to figure out where you're going. And if you know where you're going, then you can kind of step into how you're doing it. So it's like on a tricycle. Once you get to that point, then you get onto the bike with the training wheels. And then you can get on to the next step. So don't look at people that are out there polished going, they're just so far beyond what I can do. I got to tap out, I can't. Because you all can. It's just taking it steps at a time. One of the great resources, and that's why I like the Century 21 brand, is a couple years ago, they started talking about how could you share some of the tips and what you do to help others? Because I've learned from others to get to where I am. And that's where the book came out, 9 Secrets to Success from Leading Real Estate Pros. In there, I have a chapter on doing video. And we broke that out saying, how can you shoot video? I don't like the way I look on camera. Okay, I didn't like the way I looked on camera, started working out better, lost a little excess weight, and all of a sudden that was a little bit better for me. But I'm also a Leo, so I'm not afraid to be on camera in personality type. Then we started looking at tools and resources. So I've got the Osmo Pocket. That's great because I can set it up. It's now taking the gimbal that they were using on some of the drones. I can watch on the screen that's on the front of this because it's all one piece that fits in my pocket. It will face track me as I'm moving around, so I'm not stuck in a static shot. I also have the Osmo Mobile, so I can take my iPhone, set that up there, and shoot it with the Osmo. Or I can just pick up my phone and shoot off the phone. So you don't need high-tech tools. You just got to figure out what story do you want to tell, and then how can you pull that story back together. So the next piece that comes up is, how does he figure out how to do these? Like he did that video on his Instagram story about walking around the house. I don't know how to edit. I go onto YouTube, I do a search, how do you edit? And then you pull it back in. So that's where the tips come. And then on there, it talked about how you can shoot the clips and then swipe the phone to the side. So it's creating a transition. So as you went from one scene to the next, I didn't stop and then start the next one. It kind of had a fluid motion to it. So when we talk about different stories, how can your stories emulate to what you have? If you have a great listing, like some of mine that come in that have got a 1940s log cabin on a lake that came out of the World's Fair, that's got content to be able to shoot and tell a story around. If you don't have that, you just got a basic house, what are the other elements? So I started looking at, well, who comes into my market? I got some people coming out for retirement. So what's happening in the retirement segment? Right now, zero entrance showers are becoming popular. So that way, if you end up in a wheelchair or assisted living, it's easier to get in and out of them. That story then relates to my parents. My father gets up about 3 weeks ago off the toilet, falls face first into the bottom of the shower. My mom saying, what's going on? I'm saying, when you renovated, we should have put hand bars in next to the toilet if that's starting to happen. Her first thing was, nope, don't need to do that. Once he got in and got some testing, they're saying, oh, the lower lungs are getting different pressure. This was making him lightheaded, and he's not getting oxygen retention the same way. So that's why he's a little dizzy getting from the toilet up. By Monday, when the guy was coming in to fix the shower door, they were also talking about adding grab bars as they're going through. So if we're saying it in a way that you need to do grab bars, what did my mom say? No. If you put the information out to where they can relate to it and discover it on their own, then it becomes their idea. And now we're starting to get the crux of why I wanted to do this video and share it. Is instead of telling, which I've been doing a lot of that in this first part, we need to look at what is their path with our experience and how can we be ahead of them within that pathway. So we're answering their questions without saying it to them. Delivering extraordinary experiences. One of mine, when they come up, all the neighbors get all excited with a new listing. Then they're waiting to see when it's going to sell. When that property does sell, then I come up with a too late rider that we put on the bottom of it. So I'll do a little social video. How do I shoot a social video of me putting that on the sign when I don't have anybody with me? I've got a little tripod that holds the camera, and then I take my watch and I can see what's on the camera and I can shoot the video or myself, and I'm done in 2 seconds because I was prepared to know to bring this and this to that property when I was going to shoot it. So that's part of my checklist for the day. Checklist for the day. Yes, you have to make a plan. We all get up in the morning with these great ideas. We walk out, life gets in the way. We get to the end of it and saying we don't have time. If you start coming up with a plan, if I need to do this content to get to the next post or the next feed or the next update, that works. When I do that post, I'm then saying I should share that with my sellers so that they see that. I should share it to the neighbors in the neighborhood so they're getting involved with it. The next part, once it goes under contract, if it's a new person moving in for retirement, we're then taking a card to go through the neighbors to welcome them to the neighborhood. So while they're going through their inspections and paperwork and contract and all that, we're spending those times to knock on doors and introduce who's coming in, because that's the other thing they want to learn. We're not waiting for the property to sell to then send out a postcard that says, welcome your new neighbors. If we do tie something that in with it, on the backside, I'm saying, welcome your new neighbors. After falling in love with the neighborhood, your newest neighbors are anxious to enjoy the community with family and friends. Wave and say hi as you cross paths. P.S. They love all those coffee. So I'm sharing something about that person without giving out their privacy, because I already talked to the buyer and said, do you mind if I send out a welcome card? Because I know there's a lot of neighbors here that you're going to get along with. And they're saying, yes, just don't put my name on it. So there's ways to tell those stories that you're keeping them engaged. I'm asking my buyer another question. So that opened up to it. When I go to those storylines, what are some of the things that the buyers are looking through when they see the house? This is great. Now they're back in my market to do a home inspection. While they're in doing that home inspection, what do they start doing? Picturing themselves moving into the space and where they're going to put their furniture. So I've got a measuring tape with my logo on it. I've also done a floor plan from my Matterport, so that floor plan's already ready. Now, if I go into that house and on the kitchen countertop, I put that floor plan out and that measuring tape and a little notepad that's also got my logo and a pen and paper, it looks too engineered and they resist it. If they're in talking about, well, I wonder if this could fit, I'm like, oh, hold on a second. I think I've got a measuring tape, and I run out to the vehicle and come back in. Then they're like, oh my God, this is great. I'm like, keep it. And they're like, no, that's yours. And I'm like, no, you can have it. And on the countertop, I had the floor plan sitting there. So when they walk by, they're like, oh, is this a plan of the house? Could I use this? Do you have an extra copy for me? You're kind of putting those elements out So it feels natural to them and they're discovering it in their own format. It's not here, 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 where they're just sitting and listening. So now we tie into how can we also do this with our listing appointments? I meet all of my sellers in the office and I go through all this marketing and branding on the computer. So they're seeing all these different websites, where we go, what our social media is. Here's my Instagram, Jerry Knows North Fork, that talks about the area. Here's my business one on Facebook of Jerry Cibulski team. But as we're going through that, I'm also starting to add in questions to them. How many homes do you think sold in your community, in your hamlet, that went into a bidding war and went over market value? They have no idea, but they're interested in that question. So now they're listening to that and answering it. And then that helps us put into perspective, setting their expectations, because sometimes they get so excited that when they do get the right offers and the right deals, they're thinking it came too soon and too easy. So that's another question that comes in. When we come on the market and we launch it and we've done our open house and we've tied it in with the Valentine's Day and we get all these people, when you get a good offer, how long do you want to wait till you accept that to go forward to work on closing? Do you want to do that in a week or so, or do you want to wait like 2 months or 3 months? If we're on a 6-month listing, do you want to wait till like the 5th month to figure out who it's going? And they're going, well, why would I want to wait that long? So you're asking that question for them to answer themselves of, if I get the right deal, I'm looking to list it to sell it. I'm not looking to wait 3 more months. So we need to ask them the questions that we already know the answers from experience that they don't know. So my last trip coming back from a CRS conference in Vegas, I started looking at that saying, you need to hire us to ask the questions you're not thinking of, to provide you the answers that you know are trusted and resourced. Because I think in our world now, they all feel they're better real estate buyers or sellers than the real estate brokers. And we're complaining about that in the background. We need to get back ahead of that, saying, we're guiding you through this process like Disney. We're a tour guide through it, and it's all triggered. They've created a complete experience there, and it comes across seamlessly because they've already anticipated your needs before you've ever gone through. You know what monorail you were on. You know what graphic was in the parking lot when you got in there, and you're excited to see it. It's not B13. It's got all these other elements tied together. So I come back saying, how can I pull some of those elements into my market? That's where the North Fork came from. Then with that North Fork, it got so much engagement because it was real. People could relate to it. It's all potato farms out here and vineyards. It's got a rural, fun feel, but it's all this farm-to-table organic food. So now they're going, it's great vistas, seeing all these fields. It's great food when we're in there eating. So they could associate with that fork graphic that it made sense to them. We then trademark that. That trademark is going to come out, and we're going to start doing hats and t-shirts and bags with that on here. So it becomes like a tourist souvenir, is they can go to the beaches with a beach bag. They can have a cap that's working with it. And it says nothing about Jerry Cibulski. It says nothing about Century 21. It's not real estate oriented. I do have the branded materials for Century 21. So you'll never find me without my C21 glasses and some of the other pins and tools that are out there. And what's happening in the market, because I'm saying less about who I am, but I'm saying it in an interesting way. It's sticking in people's mind, and they're going, that's Jerry, the Century 21 agent. So it's quality content without screaming what you're saying in a way that's relatable. So take the braggy part out. If you put up a post and another broker sees it and does something like that with it, don't worry about it. They're never going to be you. Figure out what you love. So I sat down and did those adjectives, like I said in the beginning. What is it that's me that I enjoy? I like dressing appropriately for appointments. I've got Manhattan clients coming out here that are expecting that. When they're in New York City, as Kevin was saying, they've got their style game on. So if they're coming out to the country and I'm not dressed in what they're assimilating to, they're going to feel awkward to that. Kind of ties into the color of the sweater. I've got Florida-esque colors, even though it's the middle of the winter. Just as a reference point to that, is if you do things that they can connect to, then you're going to get excited. One of the brokers that was on was talking about Mr. Lister. So then I'm like, Mr. Lister, that's kind of interesting. It was catchy. Then you go on to look at what his page is offering to see what he's selling and what he's working with. So that was kind of where I was heading in these elements, that we're doing the Century 21 conference. And in that conference, we're also talking about delivering extraordinary experiences there. So on that, if you guys come, you're going to see more tools of how I brought those in. You're going to see more tools of how I brought that in and how we can really think about it. And what I like about Kevin, from what I've seen that he's doing to support you guys as agents, is he's having meetings and training sessions with you and then brainstorming. And that's where you need to be, in that common space, and share your best ideas and not worry about, oh my gosh, if Rose hears this, she's going to take it. Just support each other with that, and you're all going to end up packing into your grooves, because as I said, I like the orange striped monorail. Some people like the yellow. Yellow is not my thing. And that's where you kind of get into your own zone. And then because it's so natural, it's easy every day to keep it going. So you don't get stressed out saying, oh, I didn't like the way I look. If you don't like the way you look, you just work with it. I did a video of a art gallery, and she was doing watercolors. And we're outside because in the venue, there was no cell reception to do a Facebook Live, because they're saying you got to do that. So I'm on there, and there's no way to edit and cut and come back again. And I'm saying, well, what's the pricing of your artwork? And with that, the fire alarm goes off in the background. So with that fire whistle, I'm like, holy crap, this is like breaking news. She's nervous hearing it, and then with it, then just works. You just got to be comfortable and relax and not stress yourself out, because that's going to get you out of your headspace. So hearing part of this, what are the things that you're concerned about after my conversations on what you can do in your markets?
All right, this is audience participation. Unmute yourself and start talking.
Oh, I love it. I am jived. It's interesting to see things that you're doing, because I want to expand on things I've started doing, and I just love the ideas that you have. So when I saw you connect with my Facebook page the other day, I was like, who is this? Oh yeah, this is the guy that's coming to chat with us. I started branching off, seeing what all you're doing, because I'm following a guy in LA that does something very similar. And he just has wild, bizarre things where he goes into a candy store or whatever, eats a piece of candy, and goes all theatrical about eating a piece of candy. But you're just riveted at watching whatever video he has. And he's not all that glamorous on camera. It works for him. So I love seeing it. So thanks for your presentation today.
And a little bit of that came in intentionally, is because we knew this was going on, and Kevin sent the email out before, and they kind of chattered on it. Then it was like, all right, on my own, I start going in and engaging with you guys on some of your Facebook pages, going, well, who is this? And they're like, oh, that's him. So we didn't have to send an email out. We didn't have to message everybody going, remember to tune in tomorrow for the session. Then it's like, oh, that's there. So that's an example of how you can put the information out with the audience receiving it in their own way to want to tune in, as opposed to saying this is what you need to do.
And Bradley is our Mr. Lister. That is Mr. Lister himself.
And with the Mr. Lister, then start to come in with other words that can tie in off of that with the Mr. Lister, that then people kind of get hooked to it, because that's a good starting point. And then as you're out in the communities, do some of your touch points. So I'm talking about some of these different ads. This is Norfolker Magazine. So it's a regional magazine about eating, drinking, and places to go in the area. That ad that you guys saw earlier is actually in print on here, and it's saying defy mediocrity and deliver extraordinary experiences. One of our competitive brands is out there saying, if you want to market your home with the highest return, put a whale on it. That's the older school style, where it's like, well, it just seems so aggressive versus this guy sounds interesting. And then as they get into our local brand ad, this is our broker that's working in shots of the local community. He's also tied in the Century 21 graphics with it. And whether it's winter, spring, summer, or fall, don't settle for average. So there's ways to take that corporate branding, put it into the local brokerage branding, and then tie in what I'm doing in the beginning in my own personal branding, And it all fits with the real estate that we're all helping each other out, because it still says Century 21 on my ads as well as his. So we're supporting each other. And I have other brokers in the office that get listings. So it's not like all the attention's going to one and then I'm going to lose business. We all have different networks of people that we know. And we've all got competitors in our area that we all know. So I just say, I need to go in, put my best foot forward. If I feel I've done a good job and I don't get the listing, I'm good. If I go in and I stumble and I could have done better, that sits in my head and I'll think about that. If I've done something, which is what's happening now, that I've given them the right answers with my experience, they know what the process is going to be, and they're just not taking it and they're going on to somebody else with a different plan. At the end of the day, it comes back to what I said to start with. I'm not frustrated they didn't list with me to go through that path. What I'm saying is, what was it that I was doing in the beginning that they heard me, but they didn't engage with me to go to the next step? So I need to tweak my delivery of content, even though it's correct, for it to be something that they own it better. And that's where this is coming out that I'm saying, I need to break time out of my schedules to share the things I'm learning, because it also makes me a better person by setting that up. When this was coming up, I put it to the end of the month because I had a bunch of different conferences coming through and things on my schedule. But then I looked at, what are my talking points? So I've been referencing my notes app on my phone to make sure I'm going through what I wanted to say today. I also planned ahead what was on my different Facebook pages and that to be able to share them over. This is the first time I've used Zoom sharing a screen, and you see it all goes through. If it goops up and it takes too long, you laugh about it and go. So don't worry about not being perfect. It's the other parts that come in that make it relatable.
I always say be authentic and be genuine, be you. And in real life, your life and how you interact with your friends and family isn't perfect. We all make mistakes. And if you are relatable, then the consumer will recognize that.
Absolutely. So are you guys going to real estate conferences? I was down last summer to the Florida Association of Realtors sessions. Did any of you guys get a chance to get over there to look at that yourself?
Yeah, several did. Joellen was there. Brad was there. Brad actually serves on a board and in leadership role, one of our local boards. John
Awesome.
showed up. Rose, you went out to the show too, didn't you? Yes? No? Maybe she. No? Okay, never mind. Yeah, and we got obviously our Florida Realtor Conference, or the Florida FLA 21 is going to be in Tampa this year. So that's a lot better because it used to be in Marco at the JW, and the prices have just gone through the roof. It's a hike down there. So being in Tampa is going to be great to have it local, or closer, I should say, easier commute. So that's a big one because a lot of them, didn't have time. We joined the brand late in the year last year to be able to get ready for 121. But everybody will be going to FLA 20 if I have to drag them there myself.
There's no way you guys are not all going, because you got Jody Myers. And I'm telling you, that woman is full of energy. She's great on content. She can deliver on it. She's that part of Florida. That's her baby. She's talked to me about participating in part of that. That's the part that I love about Century 21's brand, is everybody supports each other. I was going through getting ready to do one of my presentations at that Florida conference on smart home technology, and I'm trying to make sure my laptop's set up and it's all going to work with it. And as I'm going through the exhibitor booths, all of a sudden out of the peripheral of my eye, I'm like, wow, what was that? And it was the Century 21 booth. So some people were complaining about the branding not being eye-catching, and I'm like, I'm not even looking for it. My headspace is in a different area, and it caught me. And then from there, Mr. Black said, oh, they're looking for somebody to do some speaking. You need to go see Kevin. So that's how Kevin and I met in that part. So why I'm also bringing up those elements is sometimes when you get out of your comfort zone to do something different, other opportunities show up that you wouldn't realize that helps you grow. So that's where the path comes from, is you just got to be willing to step out. And if you fail a little bit, you tweak it. And then you go on and do it again. And then you go to the next conference. So if you guys go to that Florida 21, then you're going to meet more people in there talking about different elements. The reason why I want to tie back to that is when I went to that vacation in Florida, I had been talking for years at our NAR conference, the Century 21 Global conferences, that we need to do video, we need to do social media, we need to talk about it. I would have all these great ideas, and a year later, I'm at the next conference going, yes, this is what I want to do. And then a year later, I'm going, yes, this is what I want to do. And I'm saying, why aren't we implementing this? My ads in the local magazines with that fork, it would take me all the effort to create one ad that I would run that same ad for the entire year. Now I'm creating a new one every month. So there's 12, plus adding that into my social media. So that ad in the magazine also adds into the local newspaper, and it goes on my social sites. But it's not the same photo shared in all of them where you've already consumed that content. So I went on that vacation saying, I'm going to take the week, sit and just brainstorm and write notes. And I had to try to figure out how to use Instagram and what I was going to post on Instagram and what my story would be. So if you look at Jerry Knows North Fork on there, there's no Century 21 branding because that's a local channel. And I'll probably do another one that's Century 21 oriented. Or I'm talking with my broker saying, what if we did more with the brokerage on there? And then the individual agents are engaging with the broker's Instagram page. So we're all sharing and networking with each other. So there's other sources of content coming in, not just the broker having to be the one bearing the whole burden. It's kind of like what corporate does. They give us some social media posts and we can use that out in our own elements. So that's where sitting down and writing out those goals and plans, when I came back to my market, I already knew what it was I wanted to do. I have to get that fork graphic done. That fork graphic then got so much engagement. People are saying, where did you get it to take a picture of it? It didn't exist. It was a graphic. So then I had to take the graphic and reverse engineer it to make a real one. And then with the real one, now you're out and about. People are like, oh, I saw you on the side of the road with your fork shooting this. Oh, we love what you're doing with it. It just becomes something relatable that goes from sitting down and creating the plan and then figuring out how you're going to implement it.
Yeah. Jim did have a question. He asked if there was any app that you recommended for quick video editing.
The one that you're going to be most comfortable with. They're all out there. I use Splice if I'm using my GoPros. I also use Adobe Premiere because I shoot some more luxury type of stuff also. And we're a Fine Homes and Estates office. So now I need to be able to amp it up in that element. So if you go onto my workplace and follow me on there, you'll see one video where I'm talking in front of going to 121. But then for the NE21, which was the Northeast Century 21 conference, I worked with my videographer and we created a more polished look in listing video on there. So you can watch that to see the difference between the two of them. But just find out what you're most comfortable with. I'm on an iPhone, so a lot of those are very easy to use. And people that are on Androids, it's a different system. But I can tell you, there's not one better than the other. Just take one, get comfortable with it, and then work from that. I was actually using Adobe or Apple's Simple Quick one. So if you go on to my Jerry Knows North Fork, I actually did a little trailer video of the back scene of shooting a shot, and then we got bit by the ticks and all that, all to get this great photo. That was just done off of one of their templates that's in there.
iMovie.
iMovie.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of the name of it.
Thank you.
Very cool. Any other questions for our guests, for Mr. Jerry? You can chat it. You can unmute yourself. You can ask. You can send a carrier pigeon, whatever you like. We accept all forms of delivery.
So one of the pieces where I get to at this point is I think everybody sits at these sessions or listens to a speaker. They're all inspired by it, but they don't know what to do next. So one of the things that I'm working on in 2019 is how can we come up with an actionable plan to be able to figure out what those next steps are going to be so that we can then say, okay, Rose, now we left this. What are we doing for January? What are you doing for February? What are you doing for March? Just on a basic one for the month. And then when you get to the next one, before you know it, we're at the end of the season and you're like, well, that was too easy. Now I can add more. That's how I got to running 3 or 4 social media channels with different content that all just become second nature because it became habits.
Yep. Ian had a question.
Yes, Jerry, how long have you been managing all your social media channels and how long do you spend each day or each week managing content?
I've been on Facebook probably 10 plus years, and I kind of played with that a little bit with the Jerry Knows North Fork and was putting a lot of real estate branded corporate messaging there, and people weren't really doing a whole lot with that. Then about 2 years ago was one of my clients coming out of New York City saying, are you on Instagram? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe with all that you do and who you are, you're not on Instagram. And I'm like, who's got time for that? Then I sat down and looked at it and I couldn't figure out how to post the picture onto my Instagram feed. That's where I was stuck. And once I figured it out, I'm like, holy crap, I'm almost embarrassed to say I couldn't figure out how to post a picture. Then with doing that picture, then it came on to, well, what am I going to say and what am I going to offer? I don't want to put the same picture on Instagram, on my Facebook, because some people know me on both channels. I think Instagram's great about photography, so I should come up with great photos just specific for Instagram. Facebook allows me to do Facebook Lives. So if you look on Workplace, there was a quick video I did getting my coffee this morning onto this meetup this morning. It's another little touch point that comes up in an alert. So that's where your head starts going around saying, all right, what are some of the things I can do to push this herd of cats forward? So for the time that I'm spending, it's broken up through the day. So as I'm in the coffee shop waiting, that's when I'll go on Instagram and start engaging with a couple people that are on there. Then when I get back in the vehicle, I'm out on an appointment. If I'm shooting something, so that too late rider, I know later this afternoon, I've got a house going under contract. So I've already got the tripod set and all that for that. And then I realized, oh, why don't I add it to part of our meeting this morning to share it with you guys? So that will become something this afternoon for about 15 minutes. When I look at my commentary, I watch what the screens are doing. So if somebody's talking about something important, I'll take that time out of it. So it's pretty much from morning to night, but it's broken up in small parts throughout that day. I'm not sitting there for an hour saying I'm devoting an hour from 8 to 9 every Monday, Tuesday, and alternate Fridays.
Okay.
And then when you're looking at what you want to share, I'm also planning out, well, we just ran on Workplace that shot of me standing in the house looking out over the water. Well, only Century 21 agents can see that. So that got loaded early. That print ad just got posted in this magazine over the weekend. So now it'll show up on my Jerry Cibulski real estate team Facebook page talking about that ad and that element. And then we're getting ready to shoot the next sequence for that ad. So now I'm talking with my photographer. Anything you see shot that I'm looking at, I'm shooting myself. Anything shot of me, I work with a photographer to coordinate that. So now we're talking about what should be my updated horizontal photos for the top of Jerry Knows North Fork Facebook page. What's going to be the ad. So it'll all theme around this coffee shop by the roaster. And when you start getting into the right elements, that's what's happened here is I go to that coffee shop. She's seen some of these ads I've done in other areas. And she goes, are you looking for location shoots? I would love you to shoot one in here. Well, that local magazine's already taken shots in that area. And I don't like to do what somebody else has already done. She says, why don't you do something in the roasting area? So now we're looking at that saying, all right, what can I do to coordinate the color? Because what's in there is going to be, you guys will see eventually, a teal blue roaster. So now we'll tie some blue in off of that. And then we start framing that storyline. So as I get those graphics pulled together and I get the outfits pulled together so it's visually interesting, now I'm looking at what am I going to talk about? So I've got this time between March 7th and now to figure out what my taglines are going to be on those social channels that I'm speaking about. And that's, I think, what Kevin's trying to say, is you need to tell an interesting story, but you can't get up in the morning, take that photo, try to post something, come up into your head while the phone's going and the dog's barking, trying to figure out what you're saying. Because when you look at it over time, it's like it's disjointed. It doesn't have a common theme. But when you guys are looking at what I'm doing, you're like, oh my God, I go to a Century 21 site and he's there with a fork there, but then I go to the other one and they're all different takes and different formats. But because it's thought through ahead of time, it's cohesive all the way through. That fork is the common denominator, but it's completely different in my Century 21 branding on my vehicle than it is on my Jerry Knows North Fork social media channel.
And I think it's really important that you didn't have all your image, what you're putting out today is very polished. And I mean, you nail it. When you first got started, it wasn't what it is today. It evolves. Go out there, guys, come up with what you want to do. It may not be perfect the first time. That's okay. You're going to learn and grow. and you'll define your own style that's unique to you and your personality, just like he's been able to do over the past couple of years.
Century 21 had me on one of the global conferences 2 years ago, and I'm speaking out in front of thousands of people. And I'm like, holy crap, look at all of this. And on there, they're saying you need to also share your down moments. And one of them was, I was in Vegas for a CRS event years ago when they were talking about shooting video. And I'm standing in the gambling section and I'm moving around in a circle. And at that time, I always like a little height on my hair, but it was cut wider on the sides. And on camera, it looked like a mushroom head, but in person, it looked great. And that's what I'm speaking about. I started looking at this, and on camera, it looked like I was wearing a mushroom head. So I had to go to my hair salon and say, we need to tweak this so it looks better on camera and in person. Share your bad parts, because then people are getting cracked up about that. Some of the ads I did before, then I'm like, oh, I got to say something about real estate. So I took a vintage clock. Kevin was talking earlier about the fans that are up there. I had a vintage clock, and I'm like, is it your time to talk about Norfolk real estate? I had a vintage radio saying the Jerry Cibulski team is tuned into Norfolk real estate. It worked at the time and people liked it, but now you can go back to that saying this was just kitschier versus what I do now. And now I'm talking less about real estate. I'm just talking more about the area and what's happening within the area, but it still is translating. I'm running a real estate ad that doesn't talk about real estate.
And I've never heard of the Norfolk before following you. And now just from you posted one video of just the water lapping against the shore once. I'm like, I just want to go see this place. Like you have me wanting to experience where you live, and I'm sure it's out of my budget. Now, of course, I'm in Florida where it's warm, but I want to go and visit that and imagine that feeling for people who want to live there. Imagine if you can create that experience here in Orlando, whether it be in College Park. You know, we have a lot of Main Street districts here, the Milk District, the Packing District, the Mills 50 area, wherever you live in Orlando, right? Being able to create that experience. Ian down there on the water off Lake Toho, right? Bradley out there with all the retirement communities in Lake County, more of a country living. We all have those areas we focus on in our market that you can start to tell that story of what makes those areas unique. I mean, Brad, we got an awesome place out there at Lake Ridge Winery towards your way. There's a lot of cool treasures we have here that you can start to tell the story.
So that was another element on my bullet points, is if I'm on the North Fork of Long Island, I got people retiring and I'm in a higher cost of living area. How many of them do you think are thinking about downsizing, going smaller and going warmer? So they're looking at Florida as options. If I'm talking to a seller about listing their home and what they can get out of there and where they can move to, if I'm more relevant of saying, if you go down by Orlando, here's some of the winter, I remember
Fairhaven.
Yep. This is some of their elements. If you're looking over by Tampa, you can get out on Treasure Island. You can get down into Bradenton if you want to look at Sarasota. If I've got some level of conversation with them that I know something about it, now I need to get it to them next. And if I can get onto your social and share that contact with them, then they can go on their phones and do more research later. But if there's nothing on your social explaining what your area is about and what you do, I'm just talking and it's out of sight, out of mind. It's like business cards. People hand them out, they go in somebody else's pocket or purse, and that's the end of it. They're no longer a functional tool. If you look at the way I do it, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but on my phone is that Norfolk graphic on my phone. If they see that, they're going, what is that? And I tell that story on the potato farm and doing that. Now I got their attention. Then I'm going, well, give me your cell phone number and I'll text you that Matterport tour you were just looking at. I got their name and phone number without asking for it. If I said, well, here's my card, what's your name and number? No, we'll take your card, we'll call you. It's not working. You got to change the way you're doing it, but you have to say something or have something they want interest in, and they'll reach out to you to take it. So that goes back to putting the floor plan on the countertop. Don't hand it to them, leave it there. Let them say, oh, this is something I would want. Could I have this? Put the breadcrumb trail out so that they're going through that full experience.
All right, guys. Well, as somebody's computer said, it's 11 o'clock. So that's our time for today. I know a lot of you have busy schedules today, and I know, Jerry, I'm sure you have a huge afternoon. So yep. I just want to say thank you for joining. I love your content. I engage with it all the time. I look forward. Like, I'm ready on bated breath for the next, picture. So what you do works, and it's so it's so simple, and I don't mean to undermine what you do, but it's just so simple. It's telling a story, and we all can do it. Everybody on this call, everybody on our team and our family has the ability to tell a cool story. And just get out there, stop being tacky and not that you're doing it, but don't be tacky, don't be salesy. Just tell a story, and people will do business with you because they know, like, and trust you, and you've shown yourself to be that expert. So at least that's what I've taken away from you, Jerry.
Any questions, any guys things or things that come up in the future, feel free to reach out. I believe in sharing and paying it forward. That's why we do all this.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Jerry.
right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Happy selling. If you need anything, give us a call. We're here for you.